Thank you so much for having me. My name is Genevieve Bellaire. I'm the founder of Realworld. Realworld is a platform to navigate adulthood and big life moments. So we help people essentially simplify and streamline real world tasks across finance, health, work, and life, and connect the next generation of consumers to the products and services that can help them across categories through the lens of life moments. So we're focused right now on helping recent college graduates start out in the real world, almost onboard them into life after school by setting them up with their first credit card, helping them understand how to save, setting up 401k programs, health insurance, all this sort of life stuff you don't learn in the classroom. And our vision for the company is to help people throughout the journey of adulthood. So whether that's getting married, having kids, getting a pet, buying a house, there's all sorts of complexity and decisions you have to make. And we want to be the one place that simplifies it all in one.
That's fantastic. I know I look at my kids who are all in that age category,
Yes.
32, 25, 21, and 19. So, seeing them struggle with certain things, and as a parent, you want to be able to help your kids as much as you can, but I also know that not every parent can. Where did this come from? How did this get started for you?
I was really lucky to have an amazing education. After college, I went to law school, so I'm a lawyer by background, and I ended up doing, graduate school immediately following college, so that when I started my first real job, I was 26 as opposed to 18 or 22. And I just found that when I was starting at that role, I was handed all the paperwork of 401ks and health insurance and all this stuff, which was great. But I just realized very quickly that I had no idea what I was doing. And my automatic response was like, oh, I need to go like call mom and dad, which as a 26-year-old who's also a lawyer was like really embarrassing. I was thinking, okay, I've been credentialed at this point. I've gone through all this training. Like, how do I not even really know how to, set up my allocations in my 401k or any of these things? I just started realizing after talking to more people that it was kind of this like secret problem that everyone had, and this almost rite of passage that people were dealing with as they graduated, that no one ever knows what they're doing around these things. It's a very emotional and sort of isolating time. And the reality is that there wasn't until now a product out there that truly just kind of closed that gap and helped people understand the decisions they had to make, who could help them, what the process was, and just sort of set them up for success. So combination of just experiencing the problem and kind of falling flat on my feet when I started in the real world, but also realizing that if we could get it right and people could truly have sort of a launch pad, that they would be much better off long term in terms of their wealth, their health, all of the things that can sort of drive society forward.
That's a fantastic premise, and that's what we do as entrepreneurs, right? We find a problem to solve. So you are a natural entrepreneur coming out, having your law degree, and I know you had a great undergrad degree as well. I think you went to Princeton, correct?
Yes.
So you had all this experience, and then entrepreneurism strikes you quickly. Was
Yes.
that shocking to you, or?
It's funny. It was definitely not the path. It was not the path I intended. And I thought I was going to be a lawyer, even though I'm technically a lawyer, but haven't gone down that way in terms of practicing. But I thought I was going to be a lawyer, go into the political world, do policy. I was very interested in sort of policy as a means for change. Politics major in undergrad, studied international relations, and I think what sort of what really struck me was that there's actually a huge potential for business to create change and positive social change through double bottom line businesses, through innovative business models, through taking some of these problems like, education doesn't really teach you a lot of these practical real world skills, and creating like a new innovation oriented solution. So I just sort of fell in love with that idea of like, you can create something from nothing. You can solve this problem through a sustainable business model without going through the bureaucracy of government. And I just kind of took a right hand turn and haven't really looked back.
Do you consider your product ed tech, or is it something different?
We sort of see us sitting in between kind of three different spheres. Education, ed tech is definitely there. And we start everything from our mission with education. Our whole idea is that we want to empower the next generation to know the decisions they need to make and understand the systems in which we operate, whether that's the financial system, the health system, the tax system, whatever it might be. So education is baked into everything we do. But I'd say fintech is another sphere where we're continuing to go deeper just by being a product that's not just teaching you about finance, but also helping you find the right product for you, as well as ultimately, hopefully help you like visualize your accounts, like really be a place where you can kind of track a lot of these things. Then the last sphere is much more what we think of as just consumer, like creating a new kind of brand and utility that is synonymous with adulthood. So we want to be the same way that, Uber became synonymous with ride sharing. We want to be Real World, the Real World company, synonymous with anything around sort of all of these life events and life moments. So a lot of that is just creating a new sort of product for the consumer that takes what, all this disaggregated information and kind of packages it into one.
Okay. What about the young person who doesn't go to college? Maybe they go directly into career. How does One World help them? Or is that
So
market?
Well, it's interesting you bring this up. So we've made, I almost feel like I've started two companies at this point because we made a pretty significant pivot in 2020 from being a college-focused, true education product that was, sold to dozens and dozens of schools across the country and served the college market, to now being a free, direct-to-consumer focused mobile product that's available to anyone. And one of the big reasons why we made that pivot was exactly this, which was that our whole mission is to simplify adulthood and democratize this critical information. And by working with partners where it was a paid product to kind of get access to it, you're essentially gatekeeping the content and information, everything from other people who are trying to get in. So whether those were people who are going straight from high school into the workforce, or whether they were people who were in college but weren't at the schools that offered our service, that this is silly. The whole idea is to be able to create a product that helps sort of everyone make this life transition. And so we pivoted it now to be a sort of choose your own adventure oriented tool where anyone can download it. It's in the App Store, it's free. And based upon your answers to different questions, even things like if you're full-time employed versus part-time, if you're a student, not a student, whatever it might be, gives you a more personalized experience around these different topics. So it's designed for everyone, frankly. And I think the reality is that as we grow as a company, we'll be able to serve people through those other ages and sort of life moments beyond just that entry point, so to speak.
Excellent. I love it. I know over this weekend, my 19-year-old and I will be sitting down with Real
Yeah.
World.
Perfect.
Getting going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great.
Because I noticed the struggles that she goes through as, a young lady hitting the world. She wants to be a beautician and a
Yeah.
hairdresser, and it's a different path.
Yeah.
And so the advisors at high school struggled with, how do we advise this person who's not doing college? And
Yeah.
she was very clear what she wanted,
Yeah.
still a good path. And so how do you kind of manage all those life things that you go through, like buying a new car or whatever? So
Absolutely.
looking
And
for
I would say a lot more people are taking different pathways than just going to college after high school. Which obviously, college wasn't always what everyone did, of course, but now I think there's just so many more different specializations, technical schools, sort of people becoming their own bosses through creating content. There's all kinds of different things that this generation specifically is doing, which is amazing, but it also makes you oftentimes have more questions around these things because you don't necessarily have the employer who's giving you the 401k, giving you the health insurance plan. You kind of have to go figure them out on your own. So we've tried to accommodate for that in the workflow, so to speak, as well.
So, switching gears slightly to how you manage your company, because that's where Cofolio comes in, and I'm kind of curious. You've
Yeah.
grown last year. You hired a bunch of people. How is that process going of kind of organizing your people and all the things that you need to do and all the documents you need to create?
Yeah, it's one of the most exciting parts, I think, about being a founder and being a business owner is to see growth and see growth not only in terms of your product and, your users or customers or whatever it might be, but also of your team. And I think growth is not just in the sense of numbers, but also just people getting better and better at their job, like really figuring out the pathways that they want to go down at the company. And so I've been really fortunate just over the last few years to work with some amazing people who've really dug in, been highly mission driven, and have just grown within the organization and sort of, almost had the opportunity to write their own ticket, so to speak, because it's such an early stage company as to what they want to do and sort of where they want to go deep. So that's been really exciting. And I think as a result, we doubled in size last or almost tripled in size last year. We're going to double in size again this year. And I think as a result, there's just a lot more structure to set up. There's, organization structure, there's performance reviews, there's a lot of kind of things that you would see at a larger business that in the early days of a startup are just not quite as much there because you're getting feedback and promotions and all this stuff so much more rapidly. So starting to set up more of those things and also just making sure that we have kind of all of the processes around everything from obviously health insurance, 401ks, all that sort of thing, which we've had for a while, but we're now covering like the premiums and all of that for our employees, which has been an exciting opportunity just as a company. So getting all of those different pieces together, making sure we're organized so that nothing falls through the cracks is definitely an ongoing process.
One of my interviews, the entrepreneur who has gone through a couple rounds of funding. I think first were some convertible notes and then some equity financing. So he
Yep.
has a bunch of experience, but his takeaway was you can't run your company and raise money at the same time. You really got to uh, delegate what you're going to do. Do you find the same challenge?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I'm a sole founder. I'm the only founder. And so in the earliest days when it was time to raise money, and this was not very much money, but just to get, able to hire the first person and all of that, it truly was, if you are fundraising, like nothing is happening because it's just you. So it's really stressful during that time because you think, I want to be building the business so I have traction and metrics and things to go tell all these investors when I speak with them, but I can't be simultaneously speaking with them and doing all these things. It's one of the reasons why having co-founders is definitely a great thing to consider.
Yeah.
As the company's evolved and we have, these leaders within the company, I felt a lot more comfortable stepping away to go and do fundraising, go and do hiring, do some of these more kind of, longer term processes and know that the company's operating and doing great. So I think it's definitely been something, an exercise in focus, but if you've got the right people around the table, at some point it becomes a lot easier to step away and to kind of get those things done quickly.
And in terms of managing all that stuff, are there like in your HR stack, in your marketing stack, are there certain things that you're using to great effect, or do you find some struggles? Is there anything that you're lacking at this point?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really lucky with products like Gusto have really automated a lot of what it means to be a early stage company, whether it's PTO tracking or health insurance or even just payroll and sort of all of the day-to-day things. I think having that one-stop shop has been really helpful. And then we've also built a pretty robust Notion. If you're familiar with it, sort of like a interesting product actually. Whole idea is kind of creating like a series of Google Docs almost, but taking all this content and nesting it within other content the way that you'd have folders within Google Drive, but instead you have like clickable links. And as a result, they've been able to build this product that feels a lot like a database where you can have, tables and you can have sort of different, taking notes. You can do all sorts of things. You can have Kanban boards. So it's kind of a nice, almost operating system in a way. So that's been an interesting tool. And it's one that's very flexible in the sense we can keep building off of it. But those have been two of the, I'd say, bigger things that have been helpful day to day.
Nice, that's great. I know with one of the companies that I'm doing some work for now, Jira is a big part of it, and they're kind of company
Exactly.
done all those things in Jira, which is interesting to see how they've set it up and stacked it. But there's
Yeah.
a lot of utility, and I will definitely look up Notion. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many great tools like you guys too out there that are just trying to optimize and sort of like streamline some of these processes, which, as you know, as a
Yeah,
founder, you're low on pretty much every resource, but time is the kind of the big one. So it's
great.
helpful to have things that help there.
One of the things that that same entrepreneur I was mentioning before, he sets up a MailChimp newsletter for his shareholders so that he knows once a quarter he's doing an update and he has a template and then he's sending that out. So that way he doesn't have to send 50 emails. So, streamlining a process. Do you do anything like that where, you kind of made up a process that really works for you?
Yes, end of every month, or the first week after, I guess the last of the month, I send an investor update similarly, and it's a nice format in the sense it's been iterated off of for last year or so, but it's a mix of both qualitative and quantitative information. So metrics just in terms of our performance and growth and all of that, but also some of like the highlights and lowlights of the last month. And I think it's helpful in a lot of ways. One, just that it keeps investors who've put a lot of faith in us updated on our progress and sort of connected to the issues in case there's something they can be helpful with. But I've also found that it's just helped us stay top of mind for investors too. So if they meet an interesting person who's interested in joining a startup, they're like, oh, Real World, let's send them their way. So it's sort of a kind of dual purpose there, but it's helped us maintain that strong relationship with them.
So from the time that you started, can you pinpoint anything that you would say that was probably my biggest struggle. And if I could tell somebody else to not do that, you can steer clear or do it differently.
I think, to be honest, we pivoted from being a B2B model, as I described, to B2C. And when I say I feel like I built two businesses, I truly feel like I built two businesses, because I think that it was uh, building a company B2B is just a very different process from doing it B2C in the terms of the people you hire, in terms of the resources you need, in terms of the way you spend your time, actually sales and account management and all of that, and implementation versus marketing and focus on product. And so I think getting that decision right early is just hugely important for people as they're building a business. And I've been mentoring a couple of other founders recently, and we've had this conversation repeatedly that it's so tempting in the early days to say, oh, I can kind of do both, or my product could really go either way. Like maybe I'll start here and go this way, which you have to sort of test it out and make the mistakes to figure out what the right pathway is. But it can take a lot of time and energy, and also be confusing for your users if you're doing one and then doing another. So I think to the extent you can just really rapidly figure out go to market as quickly as possible, the same way that you rapidly try and get the product right, getting go to market right, I almost think those two should be truly in tandem,
Yeah.
because they're very interdependent in terms of what you do and who you hire and money you raise and all those things.
Yeah, having my background is in marketing. I
Right.
worked at a number of digital agencies, and the cost to do a consumer-based startup is so much different. I mean, you need a lot more resources. You have to put out a lot more feelers out into the marketplace. So it's a different model
Yeah.
altogether. So I think that's terrific that you've been able to kind of navigate those waters and stay afloat because
Thank
that's
you.
not always easy.
No, definitely a lot to figure out all the time.
And I met you when you were B2B.
Exactly. I know, and how things have changed.
Yes, but I think it's a terrific model. And I know my own experience, some of the struggles that we had in trying to go into the college marketplace and set up shop and really build a utility that was not normal for the educators to understand. And I often say, and I'm going to give a shout out to Roger Woolsey, who introduced us when he was back at Dartmouth.
Yes.
He was an entrepreneur at heart, or an intrapreneur. There's not many of those in the college marketplace, and so I don't think I realized that at the time of how much of a trendsetter he was. He was willing to kind of go outside the box.
Yep.
So making that transition was really difficult. So I congratulate you for
Thank you.
finding your way. Yeah.
Thank you. We were so lucky to work with, champions like a Roger, at some of these other schools. But as you said, I think it's always about finding the champion, and particularly finding someone who is willing to take a bet on an early stage company. And it can be hard to find that in certain ecosystems for sure.
Well, we're going to wrap up here. I know we have lots of other things going on. So, is there any final thoughts that you have in terms of kind of looking forward, now that you've had, five or so years of experience at this? What do you look forward to, and what gives you pause now that looking into the future and say, I'm gonna plan or do this a specific way because of my experience as an entrepreneur?
I think I just have a very different approach to hiring now and than I ever did previously, just because I've gotten the chance to work with some really incredible people, and have kind of just a level of talent that we've made be part of our culture and sort of part of our ethos. So I think I just think a lot more about like long-term hiring, because if we want to build a really big, successful business, we need people who are going to dig in and continue to grow in that way. So definitely a lot of learnings there. I think also the importance of sequencing in terms of product, in terms of iterating and exploring new markets, and just really being thoughtful about the roadmap, has been something that's been top of mind too. And if you look at the progress we've made over the last few years, so much of it is still aligned with the initial way we were thinking about things, but just making sure that it's kind of each step is almost like a step function in terms of progress, and sort of a continuously iterative process. So I think those two things, just getting the right people around the table who have long-term thinking and, mission-driven mindset, and then making sure that we're doing things in the right order to maximize the potential of what real world can be, are the two things top of mind, at least at this moment.
Well, thank you, Genevieve, Ryan, and best of luck to Real World and to you personally.
Thank
I
you.
to keep following what's going on and seeing your success. This is awesome.
Thank you so much, Richard. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.